Former President John Mahama and veteran journalist Kwesi Pratt Jr. have criticized the Ghana Police Service's boycott of the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election violence commemoration. According to them, the service's refusal to provide security for organizers of the one-year anniversary of the sad occurrence is an indictment on its professionalism. We'll hear from the former president shortly, but here is a reminder of what took place a year ago and subsequent events.
Gunshots fired, blood splashed on the floor, and what followed was total chaos at the La Bawaleshi Presby polling station, barely 2 hours after polls opened. Dozens of masked men, believed to be members of the anti-terrorism squad of the Ghana Police Service, stormed the station and fired some shots. 6 persons have sustained various degrees of injuries and are receiving treatment at the Wuogon hospital. It is unclear what may have triggered the chaos, but eyewitnesses say the armed men fired shots and attacked some polling agents. Ningo Prampram NP Sam George was one of those seen in the middle of the chaos and confrontation. This was soon followed by an announcement by the national chairman of the NDC that it had withdrawn from the race following unwarranted attacks on its supporters and parliamentary candidates.
We cannot subject any of our members to danger because of elections. In the circumstances, I have conferred with the parliamentary candidates and the leadership of the NDC. We have no option than to withdraw from the ongoing exercise.
In a sharp response from the governing New Patriotic Party, they accused the NDC of fueling the violence that has characterized the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election. According to the NPP's communications director, Yabuabing Asamoah, the NDC planned to mar the polls.
The ground. This is a by-election. It's one constituency. So there ought not to be any difficulty about maintaining law and order. The difficulty I find is that I believe it's premeditated. It is orchestrated. And therefore, incidents are being blown out of proportion. We are informed, as I just stated, that there was an engagement with some thugs who were camped right behind the candidates, the NDC candidate's house. And instead of engaging the police in a civil manner, they chose to exchange gunshots with the police.
Maxwell Agbagba has a wrap of today's event marking 1 year of the election violence. But before that, there was a statement, an internal memo within the police service that JoyNews has a hold of. Just so you understand the wrap and the details of that wrap. This police wireless message says, and it reads, invitation is a response to an invitation to the 1 year commemorative Durbar of the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election violence and provision of security. And it goes on to say that information from the regional command indicates that the NDC and others intend to celebrate the 1 year Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election election. DPOL AR, that's Accra region, directs no police officer should be detailed to provide security for the event. Indeed, all police officers within the region must dissociate themselves from the event. Any police officer found to have availed him or himself at the ceremony will be severely sanctioned, except for strict compliance regards, and it is signed for originator Emmanuel Efriye Sechi, ACPOL 2IC Accra region. Here is Maxwell Agbagba with that commemoration event he just returned from.
Scene of the incident many have described as a blot on Ghana's democratic credentials. Well, on the 31st January 2019, there was a lot of blood here In a video obtained by JoyNews, we counted more than 50 gunshots fired by personnel from the national security. There were many bullet holes on trees and structures here, very close to the residence of the parliamentary candidate of Ayawaso West, Wuogon Delale Kwesi Brempong. At today's commemorative event, former President John Dramani Mahama served notice that persons who caused trouble in the December 2020 elections will be dealt with if he's elected as president. He says that they will be made to individually account for their actions.
And we will call on the people of Ghana to prevent any subversion of the will of the people and resist any attempt to undermine the Constitution of Ghana on 7th December 2020. But let me serve notice that all those contemplating bloodshed and their promoters, that if they shed any Ghanaian blood on 7th December 2020, if by the grace of God I become the president of this republic, let me repeat that. Let me serve notice that all those contemplating bloodshed and their promoters, that if they shed any Ghanaian blood on 7th 2020, if by the grace of God I become president on 7th January 2021, they will be held individually to account for their actions. Ladies and gentlemen, we will not keep quiet because our SHS children are going to be involved in that electoral process. There will be pregnant women and the aged present to vote, and that is why we cannot remain silent. There will be Christians, there will be Muslims, there will be traditionalists, and people of all religious faiths right there, and that is why we must stop them now. And that is why we must resist the rule of the oppressors. No Ghanaian can sit on the fence claiming neutrality. Every single individual across our nation must stand up and choose one of two sides. You either choose the side of Ghana or you choose the side of impunity and violence.
He has also been condemning a police wireless message urging police officers not to come anywhere close to the commemorative event ground. President Mahama has described that action as bastardization of the service. We are told that the NDC had to rely on the personal bodyguards of the former presidents and some members of parliament here.
And so when he says they must dissociate themselves from the event or face severe sanction, which professional police officer will send a message like this? It shows the bastardization of the institutions of state that have taken place under this NDC administration, NPP administration. Of course, NDC is coming. We will reform the police service. And so I read this notice and I felt sad. And I believe that our police officers must remember that their dedication and their duty is to the state and the Constitution. And in everything that they do, they must remain neutral and non-partisan. It is a very sorry date for the police service to issue a command like this, asking all security personnel One, not to provide security for the event, and then two, to dissociate themselves from the event. It means they shouldn't do anything to associate themselves with the events of that fortunate day in this constituency. I feel very sad. But I promise that we will take action when we come into office to restore the confidence of the people of Ghana in their police service. The motto of the service is service with integrity. We will work to restore the integrity of the Ghana Police Service.
The then parliamentary candidate for the Ayawaso West Wuogon constituency for the NDC, Delali Kwesi Brempong, was in this office when the shooting started echoing across this Bawaleshi community. A year on, he has described the incident as barbaric.
Innocent people, innocent supporters here were shot at. Several gunshots. About 26, 27 of them were wounded. That was what happened. A very barbaric terrorist attack in the 21st century. That was what happened here.
Personally, where were you when the incident happened, when the shooting started?
Just behind, at the police station, just behind me here. Yes. So when it started, actually I was called, so I was very close, watching, and then eventually I came in.
How terrified was it for you when you were hearing the gunshots echoing?
It's more barbaric rather than terrifying. For a modern elected government in the 21st century to sponsor such atrocity against unarmed innocent people. To me, if you want to talk about horror or how terrifying it was, it's more barbaric. It's unthinkable. You can imagine it happening in Ghana, especially. So to me, the idea of it having happened is what worries me.
Today you have been commended by the party chairman and by quite a number of people we spoke to for withdrawing, from that election, saying that if it is for your sake, for your election, that these blood will be shed. I don't want it anymore. What motivated you?
Do I want to kill everybody to get to parliament? Then who am I going to represent? That's why I say it's barbaric. I don't want to use certain words because it will be so unpleasant. Illegal. And I am surprised that a lawyer president, I cannot take this in very seriously. I cannot walk over blood to get into parliament. For what? To represent who? If you kill everybody in Ghana, who else are you going to represent? Who will you govern? That is my outlook. So it is not about me. It's about principles. It's about the processes. It's about, ethical governance. It's about legal governance. It's about the sovereignty of Ghana. It's about Ghana. It's about democracy in Ghana. It's not about the Delali Kwesi Brempong.
Finally, on the prosecution, the recommendations by the Ayawaso West Wuogon Commission, they recommended the prosecution of double for, unauthorized possession of a firearm, and then one Suleimana who assaulted some George. A year on, nothing has been done. What do you make of that recommendation and how President Akufo-Addo has handled
frankly,
reports from the
Frankly, I don't have the legal competence to comment on some of the issues, but I accept fully the recommendations of the eminent commissioners who I know personally. They are scholar practitioners of high repute. I 100% accept their recommendations, but I declare the white paper useless because the white paper baptized all the crimes into political scenes. So the white paper is entirely useless. It has to be relooked at.
Ningo Pram NP and a victim of the Ayawaso West Wuogon violence, George has served a notice that the NDC will be heading to court next week to force President Akufo-Addo to implement portions of the Ayawaso West Wuogon Commission white paper. He says the president has so far been the prosecution, jury, and judge in his own court.
Mr. President, fellow citizens gathered here, the Commission revealed to all and sundry that the sad events of January 31st, 2019 were premeditated, cold, and calculated attempts to cause mayhem and inflict maximum damage on members of the NDC. Unfortunately for them, what they do not know is that, as Charles Fourier says, despots prefer the friendship of dogs who, unjustly mistreated and debased, still love the men who serve them. We are not dogs, we are lions. And because we are lions, we will not relent in our fight back. We will fight back and achieve justice, one way or the other. The Emil Short Commission issued their report and indicted extensively the president and his dysfunctional appointments to the national security apparatus and the individuals involved and identified in the unfortunate incident of 31st January 2019. The president has roundly rejected the findings of the commission. One thing we will tell the president is that he has become prosecution, jury, and judge in his own court. On the basis of this, Mr. Incoming President John Dramani Mahama, myself and the NDC will next week be filing a lawsuit against His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to challenge the findings of the white paper that has been issued, and challenge the basis for that white paper and the rubbishing of the Emil Short Commission. And we call on His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the Chief Despot of the Republic, to immediately give life to the recommendations of the Emil Short Commission. No matter how long the journey to justice will be, we know that we will secure justice one day, someday, very soon, under John Dramani Mahama as the president of this republic.
I've also been speaking to the national organizer of the NDC, Joshua Akamba. Well, he is condemning the police for issuing that directive for no officers to be here at today's commemorative event.
The former president's security was the one you saw. No security came here because obviously they've been threatened, police commander. They've been threatened by deputy regional police commander. And that man, but you see, JoyNews, I want you to let him know that this is a stigma on him. It would embarrass him forever throughout his life. That we will keep that and we'll keep flashing it on his face. And we are going to organize a program on police and police discipline. And we'll highlight him and discuss him the whole day for the whole world to know how that kind of a police officer is. When you have an irresponsible MPP government, where do you think this will go? Double is still working around the Kotoko International Airport, built by President Mahama. These people are shameless people. Shameless. Shameless. I haven't seen anybody as shameful as Nana Addo and his following. If they were men, the same way the police commander had written, that no police officer should come here, of which I know Nana Addo is aware of it. Because I challenge him, if he's not aware, he should dismiss that police officer by the close of today. Now, Double and his following. When I sometimes go, the last time I was at the Maritime Hospital, I saw people working at the hospital, and I said, wow, the MPP are shameful. They can come and work in places that they said, President Mahama, you remember that with the Green Book? They said that the Green Book was Photoshop. The airport, that Double, who had come to visit mayhem of the people who voted for President Mahama to become president and to have that knowledge to put up that airport, they are working there. You think God will not punish these people? You think God will not punish these useless people? But you see, let them know, Macho, Macho came and met strength. You understand? And soon, Nana Addo will become very, very former president. And will go in the history of this country. But I promise him that me, with the videos, unless they delete it, I'll use that video and take him to the court of International Criminal Court. I promise him that that video is still there. I'll use that video and the white paper that he has released to try him, to take him to court for him to be tried.
Managing news editor of the Insight newspaper, Kwesi Pratt, used the opportunity to wade into the controversial new voters register debate. Well, he says that some arguments put forward for a new voters register defies logic.
One of the major things threatening our democracy today and casting a shadow of doubt about the outcome of the 2020 elections is the attempt to fabricate a new voters register. And some of the arguments that have been made simply defy common sense. People make arguments, you look them in the face, and you begin to wonder where common sense has fled to. We are told that the Ghanaian voters register has dead people on it and therefore it is not useful. Show me one country in the world, from Afghanistan through India, through Pakistan to the United States of America, where you don't have dead people on the register. It's impossible to have a register without dead people. If you finish compiling the register at 12 noon today, by 1 o'clock, somebody will die. There will always be dead people on the register. So that's a bad argument. It's an argument which should not be made. We are being told again that we need to compile a new voters register because the machines are faulty. If the machines are faulty, why wipe the whole data? Why don't you simply change the machines? This is the first time in my life, and perhaps the first time in recorded history, that a police institution is calling on policemen not to provide security. Now, if the police is not providing security, what is the police there for? Indeed, what happened yesterday is a continuation on what happened on the 31st of January 2019. It's a continuation. By announcing that the police was not going to provide security for this event, what was the police service seeking to do? Was the police service not sending a signal to hoodlums that they can come here and do as it please and that the police would not act? Was that not what the police was doing yesterday? In any case, whether we like it or not, President John Dramani Mahama is a president of this country, has been a president of this country before. And he's entitled to the security which is offered former President Kufuor, is entitled to the same security which is offered former President Jerry John Rawlings and every other person. The police must provide reasons why former President John Dramani Mahama cannot be provided with security when he attends public events like this one. I am totally shocked and disgusted by the conduct of our police service. And indeed, I'd like to use this opportunity to send a very clear and loud warning to our security services. Our security services should not forget that the people of this country defeat British colonialism at the time when Britain was said to rule the waves. We defeated British colonialism. The people in the security services should not forget what happened in Haiti when under Papa Doc and Baby Doc, they established Tonton Marcus to terrorize the people. They still drove them out of power. The security services should not forget the fact that the United States of America, with all its might, was driven out of Vietnam with its tails behind its knees. So, no security force can stand against the will and determination of the people. And that ultimately, the people of this country will take their destiny into their own hands and they will defeat all the negative forces which intend to cause chaos and mayhem in our country. And I can assure them of that.
Well, earlier this month, Secretary to the defunct Emil Short Commission, Ernest Kofi Abochi, called for a cleanup of the security services ahead of this year's general elections to forestall the lapses witnessed during the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election.
Elections should not be about bloodshed. Elections should not be about instability, violence of any kind. And so all forms of violence should be abhorred and should be rejected by the youth. The youth are the future owners of this country. And so if we destroy this country by any form of violence, the youth are the biggest losers. we should not go into any election fearing for ourselves and fearing for the stability of Ghana. So my advice to the youth is that they should see themselves as actually the owners of the Commonwealth, the Ghanaian Commonwealth. And as we go into elections, elections should be about decision-making. If the youth have divergent political opinions, they should try and sway others to their opinions. They should support their political parties. But the youth should always have at the back of their minds that ultimately the ultimate destruction of this country is on their heads. And they are the biggest losers moving forward. And so my simple advice for the youth, and probably may have fallen out of that bracket, but I think I'm in the youth myself, we should be conscious and calculating of all our actions, because in the end, when all is done and dusted, we are one country. When it all is done and dusted, it's all about the decisions that affect our economic bottom line, about our political stability, about the future of our country and the future of our children and our children's children. So my simple advice is Ayawaso should just be a never again. It should never happen again in this country, and I'm confident that 2020 will happen without much political violence, especially if the youth do not involve themselves in that.
We've made several attempts to reach the police for their version of the story, but none of them have spoken to us. We're still trying, putting in the efforts to get them. But some of you have been sending your messages to us, what you think about what happened today. I'll read those messages and then we'll move on. This one says, my name is Martin Owusu Boateng from Kumasi. Today I am very shocked and sad of the bastardization of the police service under this administration. He goes on to say, how can a police commander order other colleagues of police not to provide security for Mahama? This is about time stakeholders stand up in protest the minorities in the country. You say that you have to criticize a government or an institution for wrongdoing because the rest of the message I can't really understand because it's not as coherent as it should be. This one says, good afternoon, Gifty Ghanaians should let us support this current Attorney General. You're talking about the, I'm sure you're referring to the story we did earlier about Zoom Lion. You say to support it's the Auditor General. He is the one to purge our institutions of the abuse of public funds. Emmanuel Derry from Kauba. Emmanuel, thank you very much for sending that message. This one says, it's from AU Farouk Tamale North, says the law must deal with the drivers who drive recklessly. You also say that robbing the assemblies, Ghana is not safe. Okay, let's see what this one says. This one says, okay, you sending in a message on a refuse dump in your neighborhood that you believe require some attention. And finally, this is from Monaf Wakilu. Munaf says, if President Akufo-Addo is genuinely serious about maintaining the peace and security of this nation, the training of military groups by DCs and MCs, we don't have any verification to that effect. She says must stop. We cannot toy with the peace and security of our country. Mr. President, lead us well, govern us well. Keep sending in your messages. We will keep trying to get the police to respond to this internal memo that we've laid hands on. And of course, you've heard former President John Mahama speak against it. You've heard Kwesi Pras speak against it, and some others as well, including a member on the Communications Committee in Parliament, Sam George, who is himself a victim of the Ayawaso West Wuogon electoral violence.